What if the truth only arrives when no one is left to deny it? In the hushed silence of Hollywood Forever Cemetery, the stars are still immortalized in marble, remembered in gold. But under the weight of carved names and well-kept legends lie stories never told. The final curtain didn't fall on the stage. It fell in funeral parlors, locked drawers, and posthumous confessions. Behind the carefully lit portraits, beneath the orchestrated smiles, some of Hollywood's most iconic figures carried secrets so profound they never dared to speak them aloud. Greta Garbo retreated into exile. Clark Gable went to his grave, never acknowledging his own child. Joan Crawford's legacy shattered not on screen but in the pages of her daughter's book. These aren't just trivial footnotes in celebrity gossip. These are the other lives they lived, hidden in plain sight, shaped by fear, studio contracts, or shame. Lives they could only live once the lights were off, or once they were gone. So we ask, were they protecting themselves or protecting us? Would we still have worshipped them if we had known the truth? Let's pull back the velvet curtain one final time. Fact 1. Greta Garbo's hidden love letters. She was the woman who wanted to be alone, but that wasn't the whole truth. Greta Garbo, the reclusive icon of MGM's golden years, spent her life shrouded in mystique. Her aloof demeanor became part of her brand, but after her death, a box of letters changed everything. Discovered among her private belongings were dozens of intimate, handwritten notes addressed to another woman, Mercedes de Acosta, a playwright and socialite with known ties to Hollywood's closeted elite. The language was unmistakably tender. Garbo, who had fiercely guarded her privacy, poured emotion into those pages far from the icy persona she projected. The relationship had long been speculated, but neither woman ever confirmed it publicly. In Garbo's lifetime, even the whisper of a same-sex romance could destroy a career. Hollywood, of course, knew. Studios warned her about unladylike friendships and insisted she maintain distance publicly, but the letters remained a paper trail of a love never allowed to breathe. So when the world mourned Sweden's Sphinx in 1990, they didn't realize she'd taken something far more fragile to the grave than just old fame. She carried a silent self. Would we have seen her differently had we read those letters while she was alive? Or did she know we weren't ready? Fact 1. Clark Gable's forbidden child. They called him the King of Hollywood, but he turned his back on his own blood. Clark Gable had the swagger of a leading man, a smile that could melt resistance, and a studio-crafted image of masculinity. But behind that polished exterior lay a truth he never acknowledged publicly. He fathered a daughter with actress Loretta Young during the filming of Call of the Wild in 1935. Loretta, a devout Catholic and rising star, vanished for over a year. The studio released a cover story about a European vacation, followed by an adoption tale. In truth, she'd given birth in secret and raised her daughter, Judy Lewis, as an adopted child, never revealing the father's identity. Not to the public, not even to Judy. It wasn't until decades later, after both parents had passed, that Judy wrote her memoir and DNA confirmed what everyone had quietly guessed. Gable had known, but he never sent a letter, never visited, never spoke a word. What was more important, his image or his child? Was this silence his own choice, or the price of royalty in Hollywood's court? Fact: Joan Crawford, Mommy Dearest rewritten. She was the iron-fisted star of Mildred Pierce, the epitome of resilience on screen. Off-screen, she wore another mask. Joan Crawford adopted 4 children, presenting herself as a compassionate mother, a woman who had it all. But after her death in 1977, the mask shattered. Her daughter, Christina, published Mommy Dearest, a memoir that became a bombshell cultural moment. The accusations? Physical abuse, emotional manipulation, and performative parenting, all done for the cameras. The most infamous image: a furious Crawford screaming about wire hangers, a scene that would haunt her legacy. Hollywood was divided. Some dismissed it as revenge. Others whispered, "We always suspected." During her life, Crawford fought hard to control every narrative, every press clipping, every photo op with her children. But death made her defenseless, and the public, once in awe, was left wondering, did they mourn a mother or an illusion? Would Joan Crawford's story have ended differently if she had lived long enough to defend herself? Or had she written her own script too tightly? Fact 4. Rock Hudson's final reveal. He was the epitome of 1,950 seconds heterosexual charm. No one suspected that behind closed doors, Rock Hudson lived a life in hiding. For decades, he played romantic leads, dream men women swooned over. But as AIDS ravaged America in the early 1,980 seconds, one name changed everything. Hudson became the first major celebrity to die of the disease, And with that, his lifelong secret was revealed. He was gay. Hollywood had known. Agents had known. Close friends knew. But the public? They learned it after his death. It was a bombshell. But more than that, it was a turning point. His illness humanized a crisis the media had dehumanized for years. Suddenly, AIDS had a face. Yet the tragedy remained. Hudson lived his whole life under a fabricated identity. He smiled for cameras, while knowing the truth could destroy him. And only after his death was he allowed to become a symbol, not of shame, but of vulnerability. Was it courage to stay silent, or a sacrifice demanded by the system? Fact 1. Montgomery Clift's unseen struggle. He had the eyes of a poet and the smile of a fallen angel. But Montgomery Clift was not built for Hollywood's bright lights. Once hailed as Marlon Brando's rival, Clift carried the weight of unspoken truths. A closeted gay man in an unforgiving era, he masked his identity through carefully staged studio relationships and tortured silence. But that wasn't his only secret. A 1,956 car accident shattered his face literally. Surgery saved his life, but left him physically altered, emotionally wrecked. Studios tried to hide it. Films were shot in shadow, with edited angles. But the accident exposed more than scars. It revealed his fragility. His descent into painkillers, alcohol, and eventual breakdown wasn't just about injury, it was about a man fighting to hold together a life never truly his own. He died young, but even in death, few knew the whole story. Because Montgomery Clift didn't just play tragic characters, he was one. Fact 6. Marlene Dietrich's unwritten rules. Marlene Dietrich dazzled with androgynous beauty and magnetic mystery. She was the woman who wore tuxedos before it was fashion, who seduced both men and women, and yet she never spoke of it. Her affairs with figures like Gene Gabin and John Gilbert were whispered through Hollywood. But it was her rumored relationships with Greta Garbo, Mercedes de Acosta, and even Edith Piaf that fascinated insiders. Dietrich never publicly identified as anything. In fact, she refused all labels, even as her actions challenged every norm of the time. Offstage, she was fiercely private. Her daughter once said Marlene lived many lives but left none of them open. When she died in 1992, her diaries remained sealed. Her legacy, curated and controlled, was carefully folded shut. We may never know the full extent of her personal life, but maybe that was the point. Was silence her shield, or her final act of defiance against a world obsessed with classification? Fact 7. Spencer Tracy's double life. To the world, Spencer Tracy was the gruff, no-nonsense actor with a moral compass. On screen, he exuded dignity. Off-screen, things weren't so simple. Tracy was married but estranged from his wife for most of his life. He never divorced her. Instead, he spent over 25 years in a deeply private relationship with Katharine Hepburn. The two shared love, respect, and quiet companionship, but never cohabitated, never married, never even confirmed their romance in public. Why? Because Tracy, a devout Catholic, carried guilt, not just about Hepburn, but about his son, John, who was born deaf. Tracy blamed himself, spiraled into alcoholism, and kept his personal life strictly out of public view. Even Hepburn didn't attend his funeral by request. He died with the world, thinking he was still a loyal husband. He died with the woman he loved, unable to say goodbye. Was his silence, devotion, or denial? Fact 1. George Reeves. Superman's tragic end. He was Superman on screen, but powerless in life. George Reeves became a national icon in the 1,950 seconds, donning the cape and tights for adventures of Superman. But behind the superhero mask was a man battling depression, typecasting, and whispers of scandal. In 1959, Reeves was found dead from a gunshot wound in his bedroom. Official cause: suicide. But friends, colleagues, and even private investigators challenged the ruling. There was no powder burn, no fingerprints on the weapon. Multiple people were in the house that night. Reeves had been involved with Toni Mannix, the wife of MGM fixer Eddie Mannix, a man with deep ties to Hollywood's dark underbelly. Rumors circulated: jealousy, cover-up, studio interference. But no charges were filed. The case was quietly closed. He died with questions hanging in the air, and Hollywood quickly moved on. But his story still casts a shadow. Was it a cry for help? Or a secret that got too loud? Fact 9. Dorothy Dandridge, a star erased. She was the first black woman nominated for a Best Actress Oscar. But Dorothy Dandridge's life never reflected that triumph. After her breakthrough role in Carmen Jones, 1,954, studios didn't know what to do with her. She was too glamorous to be relegated to maid roles, but Hollywood refused to cast her as a lead. Behind the scenes, she battled racism, typecasting, and loneliness. Dandridge had affairs with white actors, including a rumored romance with Otto Preminger. But such relationships were taboo career killers in an era of segregation. Her personal finances were mishandled, her mental health suffered, and her daughter required constant care due to cerebral palsy. In 1965, she was found dead from an apparent drug overdose. She was 42. Some say it was suicide. Others blame accidental mismanagement of medication. But the real tragedy? Hollywood let her fall without ever offering a hand. Was her silence chosen or forced upon her by an industry not ready for her brilliance? Fact: Dici, James Dean. Secrets in the rearview mirror. He lived fast, he died young, and the rest was buried. James Dean's death in a car crash at 24 solidified his legend. But decades later, his private life continues to stir debate. Friends hinted that Dean may have been bisexual, rumors supported by letters, studio whispers, and former lovers' claims. In 1950 Seconds Hollywood, that was a career death sentence. Warner Brothers marketed him as a rebel heartthrob. Meanwhile, Dean moved through the shadows, exploring relationships that would have obliterated his image if exposed. He also had a dark fascination with danger, fast cars, risk, and a sense of invincibility. Some saw it as youthful arrogance. Others called it subconscious self-destruction. What we know, he left behind no confession, no memoir, no clearing of the record, just wreckage. Did he die as the person we imagined? Or someone we never truly knew? Fact: Undici, Judy Garland. A voice drowned in control. To the world, she was the girl who sang "Over the Rainbow." But Judy Garland's life behind the curtain was anything but magical. From the moment she entered MGM's orbit as a teenager, Garland was controlled. Executives criticized her appearance, forced her on diet pills by age 16, and scheduled grueling film shoots that left her dependent on stimulants to stay awake and sedatives to sleep. Her weight, her voice, her smile, everything was studio property. She married 5 times, each relationship unraveling under pressure. Her finances were a mess, her mental health fragile. Her addiction began as a prescription and became a prison. By the time of her death in 1969, at just 47, she was a burned-out voice of a generation that never listened. The autopsy said barbiturate overdose, but fans knew the real cause: years of being molded until nothing remained. Did she die chasing her own rainbow? Or one Hollywood had painted for her? Fact 15. Charles Laughton's unconfirmed truth. A towering talent with an unmistakable face, Charles Laughton commanded every frame he occupied. But off-screen, he lived in ambiguity. Married to actress Elsa Lanchester for over 3 decades, their union was both real and reportedly unconsummated. Lanchester hinted delicately that Laughton was gay, but she refused to speak directly. Hollywood insiders knew. So did the studios. But it was an era of discretion and double lives. Laughton's sexuality was never publicly confirmed. He chose to remain silent, letting his performances speak instead. Films like The Hunchback of Notre Dame and Witness for the Prosecution revealed layers of sensitivity few understood came from lived experience. He died in 1962. The world lost a master actor, but we never truly met the man. Was the silence his own? Or did he simply follow the script handed to him by an industry that feared truth? Fact 13. Hedy Lamarr. Brains buried under beauty. Hedy Lamarr was known as the most beautiful woman in the world. What few knew until after her death was that she was also a genius. During World War II, Lamarr co-invented a frequency-hopping signal meant to prevent enemy jamming of torpedoes. The technology was so advanced, it later formed the basis of Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. But she wasn't taken seriously. Studios discouraged her involvement in science, fearing it would undermine her sex symbol image. She received no credit, no patent royalties, no public acknowledgement until decades after she had faded from screens and died in near obscurity in 2000. Only posthumously did the world begin to realize she wasn't just a star, she was a pioneer. Would history have remembered her differently if it had valued intellect over aesthetics? Fact 14. Sal Mineo. A death too quiet. Sal Mineo was a 2-time Oscar nominee before he turned 25. Best known for Rebel Without a Cause, he was poised to become one of Hollywood's brightest stars. Then, he vanished from leading roles. Mineo was gay, a fact he quietly accepted but didn't broadcast. In 1976, at age 37, he was stabbed to death outside his Los Angeles apartment. The motive? Officially, a robbery. But theories abounded. Some believed it was a hate crime. Others suggested he had been followed. The tragedy wasn't just his death, it was how quickly the industry moved on. Obituaries were terse, tributes were few. Hollywood had little appetite for mourning a man who lived outside its expectations. He died in darkness, both literally and metaphorically, and his name slowly disappeared from the spotlight he once commanded. Was it a random act of violence, or society's quiet punishment for living openly? Fact 15. Thelma Todd, Smiles and Suspicion. She was known as the Ice Cream Blonde, a comedic talent rising fast in the 1930 seconds. But Thelma Todd's life ended in a frozen silence. In 1935, Todd was found dead in her car, parked inside a garage on a cold December morning. The official ruling: carbon monoxide poisoning. But the circumstances were murky. She had argued with her lover director Roland West hours before. She also had ties to Lucky Luciano, one of the most notorious gangsters in America. Some say she was trying to break away from mob-controlled nightclubs. Others believe she was silenced. Her face was bruised. Her car keys were missing. Yet no further investigation was pursued. She was only 29. Todd's death remains an unsolved Hollywood mystery, and a reminder, even the funniest women in Hollywood weren't laughing off screen. Was it suicide, accident, or a murder buried beneath the glamour? Fact 16. Ramon Novarro, a leading man undone in silence. Before Valentino, there was Ramon Novarro, one of the first true Latin heartthrobs of Hollywood's silent era. With smoldering eyes and exotic charm, he became a matinee idol. But behind closed doors, Novarro lived a life the studios refused to acknowledge. He was gay, and like many in early Hollywood, he was forced into a double life: publicly heterosexual, privately terrified. In 1968, Novarro was found dead in his Los Angeles home. The scene was gruesome, bludgeoned with a metal shower rod. His killers? Two brothers he had reportedly invited over. The press twisted the story into scandalous pulp. Few focused on his artistry. Even fewer questioned how decades of suppression might leave a man isolated and vulnerable. His name faded fast from headlines, but his death left a chilling reminder: in a town of image, truth often dies first. Fact 17. Pier Angeli, the starlet who couldn't escape control. She was poised to be the next big thing: Italian beauty, elegance, and a tragic love story. Pier Angeli had it all, or so it seemed. She famously dated James Dean, but her devout Catholic mother and strict studio contracts intervened. The relationship ended. She was pushed into marriage with singer Vic Damone, but nothing fit. Her roles dried up. Depression crept in. In 1971, she was found dead from a barbiturate overdose. She was 39. Friends believed her heartbreak over James Dean lingered for years. Others pointed to the endless pressures of studio life, motherhood, and fading fame. She once said, "They made me what they wanted me to be. I was never allowed to just be myself." Was her death an escape, or the final act in a script she never wrote? Fact 18. Patsy Cline, a voice that left questions in the wind. Though not a Hollywood actress, Patsy Cline became a crossover figure, appearing on TV, film, and captivating audiences with her raw voice and presence. But her death at 30 inches, a plane crash, left more than mourning. It left rumors, whispers of a premonition, claims that she knew her end was near. Her last performances were said to be eerily emotional. Some even claim she refused to fly days earlier, citing a feeling of dread. She was at the peak of her career. And just like that, gone. No scandals, no conspiracies, just a void. And yet, the eerie quiet that followed made fans wonder, what didn't we know? Fact 17. Jean Seberg, the price of being political. An American darling in French New Wave cinema, Jean Seberg was beautiful, intelligent, and unafraid. She supported the Black Panther Party in the 1960 seconds and became an enemy of the FBI. J. Edgar Hoover's COINTELPRO targeted her. They planted fake stories in the press, claiming her unborn child wasn't her husband's, but a Black Panther's. The stress drove her to premature labor. Her baby died 2 days later. Seberg never recovered. Paranoia consumed her. Her career collapsed. In 1979, she was found dead in her car in Paris, a bottle of barbiturates nearby. The note left behind was brief. The silence after, deafening. Did Hollywood abandon her, or was she punished for speaking out in an era of silence? Fact 20. Delphine Seyrig, the architect of a feminist whisper. Best known for her haunting role in Last Year at Marienbad, Delphine Seyrig wasn't just a performer, she was an activist. In the shadows of glamour, she became a voice for women in film, challenging systemic misogyny, sexual exploitation, and the silencing of actresses beyond their youth. She co-founded a feminist video collective that documented the abuses of power in cinema, but her efforts were quiet, too radical for mainstream attention, too disruptive for celebration. When she died of cancer in 1990, obituaries praised her artistry but ignored her activism. She didn't take a scandal to the grave. She took a movement that hadn't been allowed to bloom. Was she ahead of her time, or merely buried by it? Bonus fact: the studio silence code. There was a rule in Hollywood. It wasn't written in contract. It wasn't spoken aloud on sound stages, but every star knew it. Die glamorous, die quiet, die without dragging the studio down with you. In the golden age, reputation was currency. Studio heads controlled more than careers, they controlled memory. Publicists scrubbed headlines. Private investigators erased witnesses. Medical reports were sealed. Diaries vanished. And for those who obeyed the code, who never confessed, never fought back, never broke character, they were granted immortality. Not truth, not peace, just image. Some, like Greta Garbo, vanished into shadow. Others, like Rock Hudson or Judy Garland, were used until they collapsed. And when the collapse came, the system mourned them with polished statements and staged tears, but never with honesty. This wasn't just a pattern, it was a policy. How many secrets never made it into this list? How many graves hold truths that were never even whispered? Perhaps the real legend of old Hollywood isn't what we remember, it's what we were never allowed to know. Hollywood's golden age wasn't just built on beauty and brilliance. It was built on silence, on secrets locked behind smiles, scandals buried beneath scripts, and lives lived under the weight of expectation. Some of these truths surfaced only after the final bow. Others remained sealed beneath polished tombstones and forgotten contracts. These weren't just stars. They were survivors, prisoners, ghosts in tailored gowns and studio suits. So we ask you, which of these secrets hit you hardest? Do you think these legends would have told the truth if the world had let them? Leave your thoughts below. Subscribe for more untold stories and step with us once more behind the velvet curtain.